this before.
I get the same thing every time. I'm like, what did I forget?
Yeah. Like I'm going to mess up the intro again. I usually mess up names. The pronunciation on the most, on the easiest names.
We've been called everything, so we don't mind.
All right. We are live. Welcome back to the After Action Project. Tonight's episode 96. We are joined by Neil Weidner of Active Self-Protection and the Range Monkey. We're going to be discussing their evidence-based pistol skills course. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or anywhere you're listening to this podcast. After Action Project is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. That's a terrible way to intro into a couple sponsors that we have. The first one is the Range Buddy app, rangebuddy.app. It's available on iOS and Android. It's a collection of over 160 at the moment handgun drills. They're all sorted by the required target type and filterable by the skills that you want to work. There's a virtual instructor component on there that's pretty neat, if I don't say so myself. We recently rolled out the dry fire tool, which will help you. There's a shooter's metronome in there. So if you want to work on quarter-second splits or half-second splits or whatever, it'll give you that audible tick at that interval. You can track your progress. There's an integrated leaderboard with each one of those drills, so you can see how well you shoot compared to your buddies and other users. And then you can add a bunch of drills to your favorites list. So check that out at rangebuddy.app, available on iOS and Android. And then Locked In Grip is our newest show sponsor. It's a liquid sports chalk designed and kind of intended for shooters. It lets you keep your grip locked in as you're working on the range, whether you're working on the fundamentals at the range, you're shooting a competition match with your buddies, or you're taking a class. I used it in a recent part-time course that I shot at Tim's place. And let me tell you what, that liquid sports chalk, that locked in grip, was the best thing about my performance day. I was terrible, but I would have been even worse had it not been for lockedingrip.com. It really is a great liquid sports chalk. I used another brand out in Arizona a couple years ago when I was taking a Tom Gibbons instructor course, and it turned me off. I didn't want to give it a shot. And Andy was talking about it. I was like, nah, man, that stuff is it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. And he's like, nah, try it out. It's from Brian and Shelly Hill of the Complete Combatant. So I was like, all right, those are reputable dudes. They're not going to be out there just kind of shilling anything. And lo and behold, it works. It does what it's supposed to do. I was able to apply it once. It got me through the entire day out there on the range. So it's definitely worth a shot. Check them out at lockedingrip.com. And then let's get into what everybody's here tonight. We're going to be talking about the evidence-based pistol skills course. For listeners and our viewers out there, Neil, that don't know who the heck you are, which is, I don't, if they're listening to this thing, they absolutely know who you are. But introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the firearms training world.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I am Neil Weidner. I'm the chief marketing guy for ASP, or Active Self-Protection. I do all of the marketing relationship stuff for the company, run the app, the Active Self-Protection Unlimited app, and that's kind of falls under me. And then I'm also the resident guy that's in charge of all the classes that we put on, like the evidence-based pistol or shotgun class and those kind of things that we do. I'm the guy that schedules all that, travels to teach with that. Typically, it's John and I that teach that. Depending on the size of the class, we may bring more people with us, but that is who I am. I got into the shooting world mostly just because, we had an event that affected our family in a way that made us really start focusing on self-defense. And as that snowballed over the last 16 some odd years, we found ourselves here. And so that's how we got here and why we're here now, and just trying to help other people be able to defend themselves.
That's awesome. So about a month and a half ago, last month, we did a giveaway in the Deliberate Training group. We gave away about a half case of ammo for some users of the Range Buddy app this month. So through the end of March, right? We're going into March. we are going to give away an annual subscription to the ASP Unlimited app. It's very simple to enter. All you have to do is download the Range Buddy app. There's a free version and a premium version. I guess it's freemium. So you want to download the app and then shoot this month's featured drill, the Active Self-Protection 10-round skills check drill. You're going to want to log your performance in there using the tracker, and then we will randomly choose a winner from the leaderboard. And then whatever number we randomly choose, they will get a free annual subscription or free year subscription to the Range Buddy app and the ASP Unlimited app. So check that out. It doesn't cost you anything to enter. If you want to subscribe to support the app and have full access to all of the drills, the virtual instructor, the dry fire tool, it's $2.99 a month or $14.99 a year. So check that out, and you'll have it at least until the end of March, probably the first week into April to get that done. So, the Range Monkey, introduce yourself. Talk to us a little bit about what got you into shooting and what brought you to the evidence-based pistol skills course.
Yeah. So my name is Natalie Weidner. I've been the Range Monkey with Active Self-Protection for a couple of years now. I got into shooting though just in 4-H. We did shooting sports. We did, 22 pistol, 22 rifle, all of that. And luckily enough, I had my dad's, mentorship behind me. So it went pretty well. Me and my sisters did pretty well with that, and it just kind of became a passion. It's really fun to kind of compete with your family members and just shoot and have some fun. And then, I started getting these nieces and nephews that I'm walking around with, and I'm realizing that maybe I need, some way to defend them if, the worst day of my life is to roll up on me. And so, one thing kind of led to another, and I was helping with Active Self-Protection, doing some kind of administrative tasks, helping mom and dad with stuff. I got to go and teach a class with Dad and John over in Boise, Idaho. It was just kind of random. It was during COVID, and my mom was having some asthma problems and couldn't really get on a plane. And so I got to go and help teach a class and just kind of got a feel for it. And ever since then, I've just loved helping teach classes. And also, I've arguably more loved taking classes. I've gotten to take dozens and dozens of classes over the last couple of years. And it's just been just the ride of my life for sure. And that's kind of how we got here today.
That's awesome. I have 4 kids of my own, and my oldest, that's one of the things that people ask me when my oldest was a newborn. Oh, when is he going to start shooting? And it's like, when he's ready. He's 10. He hasn't showed much interest in it now or yet, which is fine. But I picked up that Ace VR Ace XR system. And I'm pretty confident that that's going to kind of pique his interest a little bit. And then see if we get him out to the range at some point this year. And we'll see, if it's something he wants to do, that's awesome. If not, that's fine too. You don't necessarily have to be a gun guy or a gun gal to obtain the skills to defend yourself. It's a little bit easier to do with the gun, but we'll see. Awesome. So let's talk to us a little bit about the evidence-based pistol skills course, Neil. What are the minimum requirements as far as gear? What do I need to have? Do I need to have my own gun? How much ammo do I need to bring with me? Is it a holster class? What's it looking like?
It's a little bit of everything, and we kind of it changes almost every time we do it, because at the end of the class we sit and we do a very an after action report of what went well, what would we change, what could we add, what can make this better or more effective for folks. But at its core, it's basically it's a class to take after you've taken your CCW. If you believe that you can get in and out of your holster safely, then it's probably a class for you. Now, we've got some people that have taken this that are super high end competitive shooters that really run their gear very well, all the way down to people that watch the channel and are the one gun person in their family and drive across the country to take our class in private because they don't want anybody to know, and it's their first gun class. So we kind of pride ourselves in It's open to everybody. It's an evidence-based class. So the gist of it is it's based on the evidence that we've learned after watching all of these videos. I think we're upwards of, now John watches most of these, but I see my fair share of them as well. But we're somewhere around 50,000 self-defense encounters we've analyzed over the years now. And there's a few things that pop up from time to time that are pretty consistent through those. And so we work on those skills, and a lot of that is holster work. A lot of that is getting draws to first shot, some transitions and that kind of stuff. But we base it kind of off the Pareto principle. And if you can, if you can get, a B+ or an A- on your gunfight, odds are you're going to beat everybody else out there that showed up that day with you. But as far as that's kind of where it came from. The gear that you need, of course, we're HK shooters. So if you don't have a gun, there is a loaner available, or 2 or 3 that we can bring. But most of the time, people bring their own pistol. They bring their own holster. It's a lot like everybody else's stuff. Bring, a range count for this is about 400 rounds for a weekend. So a couple hundred rounds a day for a 2-day class. And, we're like everybody else. We don't allow the Serpa holsters, the small of the back carry. If that's you, that's great, but you can't do that in my class because, when my insurance is covering you, I'm not going to let that go just because there's just too many variables there. So, we try to do as much come as you are, but also come as you are and be really, really safe because it's a dangerous game that we play. And we like to play it at a pretty high level. And sometimes when people push to the point where the wheels start to wobble a little bit, bad things can happen. So let's cover ourselves as much as possible.
I love it. I love that round count. And, when I first got into shooting, it was like, I want to take it's a 1,200 round course. It's got to be a great class, right? And then I was like, wait a second, if you're shooting 1,200 rounds, where's the time for learning, right? Yeah. Where's the time for learning? So I've adjusted that, right? If I get to 400, 250, 500, and I've taken a couple classes where it's a 600 round count and they're like, hey, bring 600. You're probably not going to shoot it all, but have it so you have it. And I'm like, all right, that's that's an instructor that's been doing it for a while and knows how to dial it in. So kind of keeping in that.
And we do the whole, the EDIP method of, explain it, demonstrate it, and then go practice it with them. And so we say somewhere between 300 and 400 rounds, 300 and 500 rounds, just simply for that. Because listen, if you want to take a couple extra mags as we test this one, you may shoot a little bit more. But like you say, man, if you're shooting 1,000 rounds, it's a hard, it's just hard to learn much through that because by the end of it, your hands hurt and everything is just sore. You don't get as much time for coaching. So
yeah. I'm that guy with extra ammo though, and I have it was in one of the groups. They were talking about battle belts, and I'll wear a battle belt when I'm taking a class, but I run my gun from appendix, right? I still run it from concealed, but I do it primarily for my dump pouch, and I put 2 boxes of ammo in there, and I'm stuffing mags. Yeah, because I'm like, if there's an opportunity for an extra dude to shoot a few extra rounds, I want to be ready. I want to be ready to go. Yep. Kind of keeping in that same vein, talking about gear. Natalie, what gear did you run for this class? What gun were you shooting?
I was shooting my Beretta PX4 Storm. It's the compact version. Oh God, it's my favorite gun for sure. I have my green Holosun on there. I always forget which letters it is, so I'm scared I'm going to say the wrong one. Dad, do you know?
You shoot a 507, yes.
507. I run it with the green dot. And yeah, that's what I've taken all of my classes with, is that combo.
That's awesome. I don't know the freaking numbers. I can't keep up with clocks. Somebody's like, and they're like, you're an instructor. I'm like, dude, I don't know I don't know. That's not, my brain does not have the bandwidth for that stuff. I think Holosun has a little bit better iteration for their numbering system than Glock does. But I still don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot. We were just at SHOT Show and sitting in the Holosun booth, hanging out with those guys and just seeing all of this stuff. And I'm like, it becomes overwhelming after a while. And I'm like, I love the idea of having lots of different options for folks, but I also love the idea of finding, what works for somebody and then sticking with that, and at least trying to stay within some form or faction of guidelines there. So.
No, that makes sense. Stephanie brought up a great point. With COVID, you had to justify every round that you shot, and I think that was, aside from each state's requirements and prohibition on public gatherings, I think ammo was the next biggest challenge for folks coming out to a class, is they just couldn't get the ammo. And then when you could, it was you're looking at Gunbroker, and you were looking at paying 80 cents a round for 22. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was wild. And, going back to that class that Natalie took, and there's a whole lot more to that story, but, the fun part of that was we had plane tickets bought. We were taking off. Actually, we were flying out of Omaha because, we live in the Midwest, and depending on where you're going and what time of the day you're flying, you either have to go to Sioux Falls, Omaha, or Minneapolis, or Rapid City to find the flights that work. And we were going to Omaha. Steph got up with the sniffles and fighting her asthma a little bit. And with COVID, man, you get on an airplane with, coughing a little bit, and the whole, somebody's going to stab you with a pitchfork or something by the time you're done. And so I went downstairs and Natalie has since moved out. She's on her own, but she was still living here. And I'm like, "Hey, Nat, what are you doing this weekend?" And she said, "Well, not much." And I was like, "Well, pack a bag. We're going to Boise." And that was the extent of background she had for this class.
You said, "Can you leave for the airport in 30 minutes?"
Yeah. I think we had 30 minutes to get packed, and we had to drive because it's a 4-hour drive to get to the airport from us. So, and so, but even then, that was one of the classes. We had one of these guys that was a fan of the channel. His family was all very anti-gun. So he showed up to this class. This was his very first class, with his ammo in plastic Ziploc bags, because that was the only place he could find it. And it was garbage ammo. I ended up having to pretty much give him, some decent stuff that he could shoot. And we spent the weekend. And luckily we had a couple of real high end, like SWAT cops that took that class, that were also pretty big fans, and that I knew one of them pretty well. And I was like, "Hey, can I put this guy between you so I don't have to babysit the entire class or, time with him?" And so, because you always get a little bit nervous when you got that brand new guy, but between myself and John, and Natalie was kind of running around, hanging targets and helping out. And, the whole deal, the reason she came was to work that weekend. And things were going very well. So about lunchtime, John told her, he's like, "Hey, why don't you get on the line and just start shooting?" And so it kind of took off from there. By the end of it, everybody was like, "Who is this little girl that's out shooting us? This is but it was pretty fun.
That's awesome. You talked a lot about evidence, it's evidence-based pistol skills. What are some of those skills that you commonly see people working that really don't apply to a self-defense gun use?
Oh man, there's so much of it out there, and go ahead, Natalie. I'll let her answer that. That's a good
Sorry.
one.
The first thing that popped into my mind is practicing kind of like fighting stances while you're shooting. Like you'll see like martial arts stances, because that's, it's the best for balance, and it's the best for, if you're in a fight. But a gun is a distance tool, and so in theory, hopefully you don't have anybody like pushing you over. And so having, a really deep, Kibadach stance probably isn't the best thing that you need to do. And so I see a little bit of that, and it kind of makes me giggle a little bit. But I mean, easy fixes, you just want to make sure your toes are kind of pointed towards the target as much as you can. And the more you do it, the more precision you'll get.
Well, and I think, along those lines, it's not that you never see an entangled gunfight, but it's a rare one that you see. And I'm a big fan of the ECQC stuff too. But that kind of stuff doesn't happen as often. Now I think that's another level of stuff that it doesn't hurt to know, and it doesn't hurt to take those classes. And don't hear me say don't take.
I agree.
Classes. Yeah. It's not that they're not important. It's that, we so often get the people that are, you got to get off the X, you got to do this, you got to do, and those are the things. One, you don't see that very often in the actual evidence. Rarely do you see somebody drive and get off that. Now, law enforcement's a little different, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But it's the 3 yards, 3 shots, 3 seconds thing it's a kind of a myth. And when you start watching the evidence, And yes, it does happen, but it's not the every single time. And so, what we typically see is that person that can stand and deliver pretty quickly, or at least have the skills to stand and deliver, can then take the next steps to do what they need to do on their day. And so, we have had one of our students that was in an actual, honest to God, gunfight. And it wasn't a stand and deliver gunfight. It was, he was getting beat up by about 25 guys, and he had to draw from his belly and get a shot off while he was laying on his back, getting beat half to death. And he survived it and was cleared of all charges. But, so again, I'm not saying none of that happens, but the evidence typically shows us, that it's a little further than 3 yards. It's a lot less than 3 seconds in many cases. And the guy that gets shots on the other guy first typically wins. And so that's kind of what the evidence that we're focused on is that 80% of the skills that you're going to need to win a gunfight, because there's so much over here on the left of bang stuff, for anybody that's read that book. And there's all of this over here that's after the bang, the right of bang. We're teaching that little tiny little itty bitty bit right there. That's important though. And you got to get that right. And so if I can get you an A- on that little bit, you're going to beat 99% of the bad guys out there. So, and then for sure there's advanced stuff that we can take. But I always tell folks, I'm like, man, if you can't stand and deliver, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to move and deliver. So let's get some of these, some of the things done first that's going to get you there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I haven't seen the debate in a while, or the argument in a while, is, do I shoot and then move? Do I move and then shoot? Or do I shoot as I'm moving? And it's like, man, I don't think that happens, right? It's going to be a contextually dependent situation. And
it depends on what the bad guy's doing.
He gets the vote too.
Yeah, he gets the biggest vote, right? He gets to choose when it happens, how it happens,
when it starts. Yeah,
yes, when it starts.
Yeah.
If you're good though, you'll hopefully get to choose when it ends.
Hopefully that's the goal.
Natalie, what was the biggest challenge for you in that class as a student?
Oh, so my dad likes to teach this thing where he likes to teach this thing where you go really fast. And I'm more of the, you get really precise. I hear there's jokes about, there's the liberal shooters and the conservative shooters. And so, evidence-based pistol was, there's a part where we work on getting, as close to sub-second draws or 2 sub-second draws, right? We go to sub-second. I'm trying to make sure I'm thinking of the right class because I've taken so many, like from you. But anyways, I think the hardest part is getting to that point where I feel like the wheels are falling off. I feel like I'm going a little bit too fast. That's probably the most challenging part of any class for me. I really, really like learning and leaning into the instructor's ideas, no matter whose class I'm taking. I don't find that very challenging at all. But once I start actually performing how you're needing to perform in that class, man, it's a wild ride, and it makes me a little bit nervous, and so that's why it's challenging. But man, the results you get after you feel that though, it's great.
Let's dig into that a little bit, Neil, because I have a feeling I think I know what you're going to say or how you're going to go. But what's as an instructor, where's the value in pushing students to that kind of point where they feel like the wheels are falling off?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in that. One is, in a lot of cases, anybody that's been to a class, you see it that a significant portion of the class, and I do it too if I'm there as a student, is you look around and you're kind of gauging who's who based on their targets and that kind of stuff. And so people really struggle to give themselves permission to fail in class. And if we really start pushing something like either speed standards or accuracy standards and push people beyond that and help them understand that this is kind of a guided error kind of a scenario that allows you to see where the wheels fall off for you. And now you know your math. And that's a huge benefit in that if you know that, on my very best day, that I can draw and get a shot off at 5 yards in 1 second or less, That means under stress, odds are you're probably going to be at a 1.5. Now with a 1.5, if the bad guy comes in, we start looking at human performance. If you see this guy, if this guy turns his head and you see his ear, and you've got a credible 1.5 second draw to first shot, which most people already think they have. Anybody that doesn't come to class, if it's their first class and I ask them, that's what they will say. 1.5 to 2 seconds is typically what folks will believe that they have. Until you put them on a clock and they realize that they've got a 4 second draw to first shot. So that's the benefit of this, is we spend some time getting to understand where they're at, and they kind of can, if they know what their math is, if the worst day ever happens, now they can make a plan to react, and they can counter ambush. If they know they're a 1.5, if he shows you his ear hole, you can outdraw him, because human performance tells us that he can't react as fast as you can act. And if you're at a 2 second and he turns around and you see the back of his head, you can outdraw that guy. If you have a consistent sub-second draw, which again, that's, and the whole debate on, 10 things more important than a sub-second, I don't need that. If that's how you feel, that's great. And I agree, there are some things that are more important than that, but knowing what your draw to first shot is a very important piece. And so you can make a plan according to that. So if you're at a second and he glances away, human performance tells us that you can beat him. And again, compliance is always a thing, but, even FBI stats show us that, in compliant folks, 25% of those end up injured anyway. So now it's your gamble and you get to gamble, but, if it's me and my family, that's being, that's being, threatened, I'm going to wait. I'm at least this is what I hope. I'm going to wait my turn, and I'm going to do what I have to do to protect my family. But I know my math, and I've been in a couple of situations where the math has run through my head, and I've been very fortunate to not have to test my skills at that moment. But we had a real close call here a couple of years ago where I'm like, this is going to be the worst. I'm going to have to shoot this guy, and because I knew what my skill level was and what my math was, I was just waiting my turn and didn't have to draw my gun early, didn't have to threaten anybody, didn't have to do anything. And I knew that, I had the confidence to say, no, this is a problem I can solve. I've solved it a million times on the range, and I know so this isn't a hard problem. This is going to be a horrible issue. And very luckily that guy made a different decision and left, and none of us had to play a game that day that we didn't want to end up playing. But if I hadn't known that, if it had been 2 years before that, I might've had to draw my gun and threaten this guy. And I got to leave all of that out, and everybody got to walk home and not have to worry about it. So I think that's why we push what we push. The statistics that we see over and over and over in the evidence is that guy that gets accurate shots off first typically wins. And you can hit slow enough to lose a gunfight. That's something we see. What's the adage is, you can't miss fast enough to win a gunfight, but you can hit slow enough to lose one. That there is some reality, and there is some stuff out there that'll show that.
That makes sense. A couple things I wanted to touch on there. You were talking about knowing your math, and if we're looking at what we're going to be feeling and experiencing in the worst moment of our life, right, where our life or our freedom or our life is on the line, the fewer things you have to worry about and mentally process, the better, right? And if you're confident in your sub-second draw, you're probably also aware. One of the things that frustrates me about the training debates and arguments that we see is there's a tendency to treat skills as if they're mutually exclusive, right? Like if you have a sub-second draw and you have jailbait splits, you cannot slow yourself down, right? Or pursuing a sub-second draw is going to take away from your ability to get accurate hits. And it's like, guys, these skills aren't mutually exclusive. We can build upon one another, and we can work a lot of these skills in dry fire and validate them in live fire, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, more skills is better, right? Like it's
yeah.
If you need a second and a half draw, but you only got a 2 second draw, you're out of luck. If you have the luxury of being afforded a 2.5 seconds to get the gun out and into the fight, and you can do it in a 1.5 seconds, well, there you go. You got an extra second to figure out the other stuff.
Yep.
The other thing, when you were talking about the ear hole, if he turns and sees your ear hole, there was a series on the Active Self-Protection YouTube channel where the videos were actually dissected to that level, right? And there were timestamps and reaction times. And I don't know if I've ever seen that before, and I'm not sure where kind of the idea or the thought process to get to that. Can you share some insight into how that evidence came into play?
Well, that's the genius of John Correa, who can be with us tonight, and I'm bummed. John is my best friend on the planet, and he's a big personality and gets some grief sometimes. But this dude is a literal genius, and he's a training junkie that's taken as much training as he possibly can out there. He was I think he was the first non-sworn to take Force Science's analyst class. And since then, several more people in the industry have. And what we found there is that there is some averages of the math of how fast the human body can react, the way the foveal vision works or the peripheral vision and all of this stuff. And, it takes about, basically, from my perspective, I'm the dumb guy that can't do math, right? I can move pretty quick and my hands go really fast, but I can't do math. So I narrow it down to, it's about 0.25 seconds is how fast it takes the brain to react. And then a little bit more for it to come up with a plan to react. And so if you know how long it's going to take for somebody to react and see you, and turn around, make a plan and react and send all of the pulses from the brain, from the eyes to the brain, back to the, down to your trigger finger and all of that kind of stuff. You can do the math and come up with what that number looks like. And so when you see the ear hole, it takes about 1.5 seconds for them to come back, or a little over 1.5 seconds for them to come back, react to your movement, and then make a conscious decision that, oh no, I am going to shoot this guy that I've just been threatening. So now if we know that we're within that time frame, we can win that game, or we can win that draw, or at the very least, we're in the fight. And that's the one thing that I always really caution folks of is, listen, it doesn't mean you're going to win. It means you're in the fight. And it means you've got a fighting chance. But, if your gun is in the holster and you're looking down somebody's barrel, you're definitely not going to win. You're going to lose in that thing 99 out of 100 times. And so if you understand what that math is, and you can at least be in the game and have a fighting chance for yourself and your family. And that's really where the genesis of it all came from, was after John and Steph took that Force Science class, found out kind of what the human factors were of the math, and then just started putting a clock to it as we watched all of these and analyzed all of these different things. That's about how long it takes for them to pop back and see you, and to be able to react. So as far as I know, that I don't know that there was much. If there's been more from Force Science Institute as far as the studies that they did on this, I'm not aware of it. I think this was John applying what he learned there with the analysis that he does on these videos. So does that kind of make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was cool to see, man, because I hadn't thought. I was like, oh man, that makes sense. Because everybody wants to, if somebody, it's never draw on a gun, right? If somebody has a gun drawn on you, never draw. And it's like, well, hold on a second, right? Like there are things that happen after somebody pulls a gun on somebody before taking the next steps, right? They can have gun out, they can have you at gunpoint, they can present it to somebody else. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because the bad guy has their gun out and in the fight that you're not able to get yours out. The big deal is know the math, right? Figure out what you can do it in, and then know your limits. If you can't make a 15-yard A zone hit, well, you probably should do something to either close that distance to make the hit or increase that distance so you can get out of there. But I think there's a segment of the population when they're taking courses that might not be one of the things that they're looking to get away from that, right? Like it's the first couple classes that I took, it was, I want to build my skills. I want to increase my skills. And I don't think that I had the mindset of, I need to figure out what my limits are and what my limitations are. Because knowing that is just as important as knowing what I am capable of doing. That way I don't make a bad decision. That way I don't try to, I have a, I think I can get my gun out and into the fight in a second and a half. And it turns out it's a 2.5 second deal. And then you're in a really bad place. So, so I thought that was hugely insightful. And yeah, like you said, that's a pretty freaking smart way to look at those videos and analyze them. So if you're out there and you haven't seen them, it's on the Active Self Protection channel. I don't know if they have them cataloged in a specific one.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's on the extra channel. Well, no, I guess what you're talking about is on the main channel. I can probably get you a link that you can put in the description to this one. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know if that's cataloged anywhere for sure.
Okay. No, that's cool, man. I was like, man, that's a great way of looking at this stuff. We had Chris Bean asked a question, and I want to kick it over to Natalie. Who's this perfect student for evidence-based pistol? So what are your thoughts on that, Natalie? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Natalie.
There you go.
I wonder if there is a correct answer, but I kind of think that it should be somebody who has taken a couple of classes, because if you're looking for evidence-based pistol training, I think you have dug into this far enough that you want to learn what's real and what is just, guys just acting tough and, saying, oh, you got to do this, this, and this, and this, you want to look for actual evidence-based teaching. So I think that it would be a student that has taken a couple of classes already and is genuinely looking for what's right, and what they can learn from it. But that would kind of be my take on it. Dad, what would your take be on that?
Oh, nice throwback.
Yeah.
I would go along. I mean, it can be your first class, for sure. But I think somebody that's at least got their CCW and has done a little bit of shooting and has some of those basics down a little bit, it helps us get there a little quicker to find some of those limitations and help folks get to their math a little bit easier if they've taken a class or two. But honestly, really the bigger thing to me, a student that is open to learning and isn't there to impress me. I always start the class with, listen, my opinion is not that valuable. So if you spent this money to come here and try to impress me, I'm impressed that you're here, and I'm happy that, and your skills are, it's not uncommon that we have a shooter in class that's a better shooter than I am. I'm usually right there with most of them, but if you're there to impress the instructor, it seems disingenuous to me. I want somebody that's there that's open to learning, that wants to understand, and that wants to apply some things. And once in a while you get a guy or a gal that's like, no, I've been told this and this is how I'm going to do it, and I'm not open to it. And I always I have this little spiel that I always talk about is, at the beginning of classes, there's going to be some stuff that we talk about here this weekend that might be a little bit weird to you. And if you can embrace the weirdness for a few hours or maybe a couple of days, there's a chance you're going to learn something. And if it's just too weird at the end of the weekend, I'm not going to be offended if you don't use it, but it's going to be something that's going to be in your toolbox. Most people go home and talk to their family or talk to their, the other shooters in their community about this. And, if I can give something that you might be able to share with somebody else, an idea or a concept that might help you, then take it and run with it like that. But if you're not open to the ideas, and everybody's been in that class with that guy, that he's there as the guest instructor and wants to teach everybody stuff. And we don't run into that near as much as we used to. I think as a community, we've gotten better at this. That we're, I think as a community of training junkies, we've gotten to that point where like, no, we can learn something just about everywhere if we're just open to it. But that's the bigger thing to me is come and show up with an open mind, and embrace a little bit of weirdness and see what happens. Because I think a lot of times there's things that folks don't, there's just different angles of ways that people think of things. And, a really big one for me is that, I think everybody at their core believes they can become a more accurate shooter. I mean, everybody. I've never asked somebody, do you think you can become more accurate? And they're like, no, I'm as accurate as I can possibly be, right? They all say that. Yes, I can become more accurate. And then I'm like, can you become a faster shooter? And they all say, no, I'm an accuracy shooter. I can't be faster. And so there's a core belief in there between their ears that tells them you aren't fast. And you can't be fast. And so, and I think I stole this from Brian Hill. And I love it. There's speed mode, there's accuracy mode, and there's performance mode. And we spend a little bit of time in each one of those modes in our 2-day class. In just about every class we ever do. But if you can, when you're in speed mode, if you can embrace speed mode, I can show you you're way faster than you think you are. And once you believe that you've got that speed, now I can marry that up with accuracy in the performance mode side of things. And all of a sudden, my 3-second draw to first shot might drop to a 1.5 or a 1.2 or something along those lines. And if you believe that that's possible because you've seen yourself do it, now you can work to that and really move the needle on your performance. So that's a whole long-winded way to answer your question, Natalie. Did I answer it?
Yeah, you did.
That's awesome. And that was a very good answer for Natalie. That was a great answer. Kind of talking about the students again, with the reach that active self-protection has, have you seen challenges with students that are there more for like an entertainment course? How they phrase it, like a infotainment class instead of like they're there for the experience?
Yeah, I mean, from time to time, that's rare though. I thought that it would be more like that there would be a lot more people that, and there are a lot of folks that it's their first class, or it's, one of they're early on in their training career, and they're here because of the reach, because of the voice and the, the pull that ASP has. But it's a rare one that it's just a fan that wants to show up and, and hang out. Now, there's always that to some degree, but it's not nearly what I thought it would be. They're not there for the entertainment. Now, every now and again, there's the Neil, I want to see this. I want to see your .7. Let's see this in person. How many takes does it take you to do it on camera? And I'm like, all right, cool, here we go. And and I some days I got it and some days I don't. It's just like it's on camera. I think one of the things that folks do sometimes struggle to believe that we have a rule, and Natalie can attest to this, and it usually bites me more than it does her. But I'll just let Natalie, what's the rule of stuff that we shoot if it's on camera, what happens with it?
If we shoot it, we post it.
Yeah. And oh man, there's some days, aren't there?
Yeah, there's some days where it's problems with audio, and then there's some days where it's really just problems with us shooting.
Yeah. But but back to that original question. Yeah, I think there's some folks that want to see, hey, is this legit? Are you guys real? But for the most part, I think I think the folks that we have show up do really want to. They want to improve. They want to see what it is that we've got, and it is pretty fun. Yeah, and Chris absolutely can. There's nothing worse than showing up with your daughter and getting outshot on camera, and then you have to post it. So, yeah. But it happens more than it should.
That's awesome. It's performance. Nobody gives you credit for performance anxiety. Right?
No, they don't. No. and they say the camera adds 10 pounds. It also adds about 2,500 to your draw to first shot too. If not a full, when I get that new guy, every now and again somebody comes out and I'm like, hey, you want to make some videos? And I'm getting pretty used to it. Natalie's really used to it. Shooting on camera isn't that big a deal anymore. So it's not that anxiety, sitting there on your chest the entire time. But when you get somebody new on camera, they freak out, and it's kind of fun to watch the new guy when he's like, all of a sudden, and it's people that are great shooters. I'm thinking of a guy specifically, and I'm not going to call him out on this because he's a good friend of mine, but this guy is a great shooter. And the first time I put him on camera, it was embarrassing to the point where I didn't even I'm like, I'm not going to post that because it's not fair to you. Because at the end of it, he's like, it's with that camera on, I'm just so nervous the whole time. And as soon as we shut the camera off, he was right back to himself, so, which again is I think an opportunity for folks to add some pressure to themselves. I think as instructors, we all talk about stress and adding stress. And I would love it if we could change out the word stress and add in the word pressure. Because stress is what we do to ourselves. Pressure is what instructors can do to or to a student. And so I don't know that we can add real stress that somebody's going to be under on their worst day, but I can add some pressure. And just in a lot of cases, the timer is a great pressure adder, as is the camera. And I would you agree with that, Nat? Adding the camera pressure?
Yeah.
I find that it increases the size of the C zone, decreases the A zone for me. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like these aren't standard targets.
Yeah. What happened to these? Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're so used to having all of your focus going in front of you, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about a camera that's directly behind you.
Yeah. Oh man, it's I do not have that same rule for myself. I will, I don't speed up. I don't speed up stuff.
Yeah.
But it's with these challenges too, right? Like Tyler had the put in pads challenge.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I was, man, I'd give it one shot, and it was there's a ton that I just didn't post because I'm like, dude, that's terrible. And Andy, the last time I've shot his HK a couple times, and he's like, all right, try with the HK. And I'm watching the video, and you see me fire the first shot, and I'm in awe because I'm like, that bullet did not hit anywhere near where I thought it should hit. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it wasn't low left. I'm like, what the heck did I do during that trigger press? And then, but I shot it a couple more, and I think he's converting me to to come over to the gospel of HK. Yes, I am a cherry picker. I will only show my best self. I don't have a thick skin, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like, and part of the problem is I do it to myself. I shot that match with Tim, and I told him afterward, I was like, dude, I got the score I deserved, man. I don't work hard enough at this stuff. For whatever reason, right? I'm in this season of my life where, not making excuses. I just don't devote or dedicate enough time to improving my skill set to really be worthy of posting crap. So I don't do it. I believe I'm in a skill set where I will be good enough if I need it. And that's a terrible mentality and attitude to have, but
I don't know that it is though, Jeremy. I think that, we can all be better. But the challenge is if we stop trying to improve at all. But I think the good enough mentality is better than that mentality of, I think I'm good enough. You know what I mean? Because I think where you're at, you know your numbers, kind of where you are. And yeah, you're going to have maybe a little drop off because you haven't done your dry fire the way that you should, like the rest of us do. But I think it comes back a lot quicker for the folks that have done a significant amount of work. And, I take off way more time than I should on my dry fire too. But again, now that I kind of know my math, I can account for that as well. And so I try not to let people get too hard on themselves over that, because that happens to all of us. We all have a weird life, and our life is pretty well documented of some of the challenges we deal with at our house. But everybody has those challenges. And so, so I just tell folks, man, get back on the horse when you can get back on the horse. And, if you at least have a good idea of what your math is, you will be good enough on that day because you'll make a good decision, versus that guy that has never drawn, or we've had guys that come to our class and they can do a sub-second draw, or they can do they'll drop a .6 or a .7, but try as I might, my vision isn't fast enough to see where the hit went. And so now I'm like, okay, we've got to marry up your speed. I always think of that, Major League. Remember the Major League movie when Ricky Vaughn gets up there and they're like, we got to get this guy some control before he kills somebody. That's, so there's a lot of people out there that they've got that quick twitch, all those twitch fiber things, and they're super fast, but you've got to then marry things up in performance mode. And that's one of the things Natalie is great at is, when we get done shooting any kind of speed mode stuff, she's like, hey Dad, we need to get back in performance mode, because I don't want to walk out on the street thinking I'm a .6 when I'm not. And so she helps center me with that a lot of times. And we have some pretty good times with it.
What are some things that you're doing, methods that you're using to get people down? And one of the things that I found that works well for me, taking some students that have never shot or never drawn the handgun from a holster. And in one of our classes, we have cert pistols and we have holsters for everybody. And then we go around, we survey the room like, hey, how fast do you think you can draw your handgun from concealment and get a shot, right? And overwhelmingly, it's like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and every now and then we have the overconfident guy that's shot a gun a couple times. But what I found works really well for me is I'll start, okay, 3 seconds. Let's start there. We do that 5 or 6 times. And then we'll go down to, 2.5, 2 seconds. And then I say, okay, you guys, you're there. And then I drop it to a second. And I said, all right, guys, this is the par time. I play it for them. And they're like, oh, that's fast. But it gets everybody ramped up to beat that second par time. And then I'll crank it up to 1.5. And 90% of the students are cleaning it, right? They're able to present the handgun from the holster under 1.5 seconds. So I found working them up to where that wheel falls off and then just, discreetly pumping it up. And then the confidence that gives, right? Because you have a whole group of students that thinks, oh, I can't do this. There's no way I can do it. And you get them to that point. And I found that works very well for the segment of students that I'm teaching. And that's in a controlled cert pistol environment. Yep. So what are some things that you're doing to kind of really push students to get them to that speed side of the performance equation?
Well, the main thing that we do to help people build that belief that they are fast, we call it the walk down drill. And we start with a 5-second draw, and this is all dry. So, and you can watch this on the ASP Unlimited app. This class, our evidence-based pistol skills class, from start to finish is up there, and you can see us walk through this. But, basically John and I and Natalie and Steph or whoever is there for the class teaching, Carrie Dudenhofer's helped with this. Chris has helped with this before at our conference, that kind of stuff. We'll start with a 5-second draw, and we'll make them verbally count off. And we use Chicago because that gives the word instead of Mississippi. So it's 1 Chicago, 2 Chicago, 3 Chicago, because I can break Chicago into quarter-second splits, but that's neither here nor there. And make them move the entire time that they're verbalizing this. And then we basically walk around and just, basically help them knock the rust off of, any extra movement, if they've got a big shoulder movement or a hip movement or the head or whatever. And we're basically showing them where their inefficiencies are at 5 seconds. And then we do 8-10 draws like that. Then we go to 4 seconds and we do the same thing. And then we go to 3 seconds and we do the same thing. And the entire time we're just walking around coaching, and giving individual, person A on the line might have a shoulder thing and person B might have an elbow issue or whatever, and giving them their, some specific coaching towards here is your inefficiency in this case. Then we get down to 2 seconds and, then we go to 1.5, and then we just kind of work our way down from there, and let the wheels fall off. I think if, especially when you're in dry fire, if you can give yourself permission to fail and let the wheels fall off, you can learn some stuff about yourselves. And now you can find out, okay, if the wheels fall off at, 1.2 seconds, that's where when I go home and practice, because at the end of the class, I sit down and talk to most of the folks of, okay, so your wheels fell off about right here. Here's a dry fire routine for you that's going to help you improve from there versus going all the way back up to 5 seconds and starting over. And I get some of that from some of the different dry fire books that are out there and just kind of put together a plan for folks. But that's really the big one there. But that's all speed mode. And so when we get done, we load them up and everybody gets a few shots to see what they can do. And usually there's a lot of high-fiving and big smiles because people are, they've opened up that belief that, oh no, I am fast. I can move quicker than I thought. This isn't, it's not a parlor trick. And I know some folks think it's a parlor trick, and you can think what you want to think about it. But the fact is, if people believe they can do it, now they can work on it. But if they don't believe they can do it, they won't work on it. And so, and now go ahead and go, you can go home and work on that. But the final thing that we do in our class is we start and end with that ASP 10-round skill check that you mentioned for the giveaway that's on the Range app. And so we start with that drill to time people and score them and see where they're at. And then at the end of the 2-day class, we run it again. And I mean, 99 out of 100 people show a massive improvement in their skills and ability after a couple of days of training. Now that'll fall off over a period of time if you don't continue to work on it, but that's, we give them some things to work on when they go home. We've got the whole channel. We're always working on different stuff on the extra channel to help people maintain that. But man, that walk down drill helps give somebody real belief that they can do it. And if they believe they can do it, they'll work on it.
That makes sense. And I commented, if you haven't checked out the ASP Unlimited app, you really are missing out. There's a ton of great curated content in that app, but the biggest value, in my opinion, are the classes that you're putting on there for it doesn't cost you anything extra, right? If you want to take, if you want to take Ed Monk's course, you can take that class on there, right? You can, and for me, I'm not a big gun guy, right? And I don't know, this might shock some people. I'm not a big gun guy. For me, it's more of I get my reward comes from seeing the empowerment that people receive from this specific thing that I teach, right? Like that's really where I'm fulfilled. It's not so much the guns. I like taking classes. But I'm a weirdo. I like the classroom portion of classes, right? So when I took Tom Given's instructor course, it was the stuff that he talked about in the class that was awesome. I agree. And so for me, it's like, man, I can get Ed Monk's, his class, and I'm like, dude, that is, it's ridiculous. It's incredible. So hats off to you guys. And if you haven't checked out that ASP, check it out. You can do it monthly or you can pay for it annually. If you want a shot at getting a free year subscription to it, download the Range Buddy app, shoot the ASP 10-round skills check drill, log it in there. We're going to draw a winner from that at the end of the month. But it's worth the $100, right? The annual subscription, it's well beyond that, way far above and beyond.
I think we're upwards of 18 classes, full length self-defense classes from, you said Ed Monk, Riley Bowman's on there, Tim Herron's on there, Melody Lauer's on there, Adam Lynch is on there. I mean, there's just, there's a lot of stuff there. And then we do some other exclusive stuff there. So one of the fun my current favorite is we call it the React Ripple videos, and we live stream that every Wednesday night, and it's app exclusive. We just did episode 11, so we're pretty new to this. But so what I do is I grab one of the ASP videos off of the main channel that's got some controversy around it, because some of them do, and I don't tell John. Or I have a guest, and it's either John or Mike. I've got a few more lined up. Maybe you'll come on and do this with me once, Jeremy. It's kind of fun. But I don't tell them what the video is, and I don't tell them what the comments are. And then we go in, we do a deep dive into the actual video and the scenario, and then I let them react to comments. And sometimes it's like John, reacts to mean tweets because there's you're fat, stupid, and your hair's bad or whatever. But it gives us a chance to do a little bit deeper dive, and it's kind of fun for me to host that. And that's another exclusive one that's on there. And there's a couple more like that are coming. But I'm like you. I'm like, man, there's probably in the neighborhood of, if you had to pay for all of those training classes without any travel, hotel, or anything like that, you're probably looking at $6,000 to $7,000 worth of training on that app that you can sit and watch on your phone. And I know a lot of people that will, they'll bring that up and put an earbud in and just listen to it during their day while they're doing other busy work kind of stuff. And it's there, and you can listen to it as many times or watch it as many times as you want. And I do think it's a big value. So I appreciate you saying that.
I'm going to take Riley's class, hopefully this year, if I can get you out to. But I've watched the class on the deal, and the week that I'm taking the class, I'm watching it again.
Yeah.
Right. Because as an instructor, if I have a student that's well prepared, that's awesome. So for me, it's like, man, I can increase the value of the student by watching this class.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different, especially when it comes to shooting classes, I think there's a couple of different modes of thinking. And I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer there, but there are some instructors who are like, nah, I don't want everybody to game my class and game my stuff and just work on those things. And, Tom Givens talks about that with the casino drill. A couple guys went out and they gamed that to the point where they're getting like I remember, what is it, sub 10 second casino drill, which is stupid. Stupid fast. Don't I can't do it. But his whole point on that is if you go game it, you could get really, really good at this and you can win a coin in the class. But the idea is, can you keep tracking? Can you stay mentally in the drill and all that? So, and then there's some guys that are like, no, I want to keep all of my drills kind of not necessarily secret, but I don't want them to be public knowledge because I want to show up and see where they are on my stuff on my day so we can work from there. I'm of the opinion, I'm like, listen, if you know what you're going to work on there, it gives you a mental rep, whether you go work on it or not. And if I were to take Riley's class again, and I will watch that again and I will work on some of that stuff, because then Riley can help me improve even more. Because there's rust that I can knock off. And like you said, there's rust that you can knock off before you take that class. Now you don't have to work on the rust. You can actually work on getting better. And so that's I think it's a personal preference, and everybody gets their own personal preference. And I don't judge one way or the other, but I do have preferences.
Yeah. It's a hell of an app, man. It is seriously the value. It's incredible. And I'm a huge fan of the app. It's awesome. I will, I put it on. I'll listen to a class while I'm finishing up my nightly paperwork. I'll turn it on in the car when I'm driving home from work. So it's a great deal. Kind of in that same vein, Natalie, what's some advice you have for students if they're wanting to just kind of set like a baseline preparation to take this class, the evidence-based pistol course? What's some advice you have for them?
I would say get out and do a little bit of dry fire, kind of find where your average draw to first shot is, so that you can come a little bit more prepared, knowing what the timing actually looks like. Because something we run into is just that a lot of people think that they have a 1 second draw to first shot when they might actually have a 3 or 4, and that's not a terrible thing. That's just something that I think that students would benefit being aware of before the class. So getting out there and just doing a little bit of dry fire, I think that's some good preparation for that class. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else advice I would give for that. I think I just think that is such a fun class to go take, and Dad and then whoever he has helping him teach that, because you typically have John or Chris helping you teach it, and both of those guys, it's just so much fun watching you teach with them, because you guys are such good teammates and do such a good job explaining these really in-depth topics. So just taking a chance, getting out there and taking that class is just going to be one of the best decisions.
Love it.
It is a fun class. I will add to that one thing. So we've had evidence-based pistol now for 5-6 years. We've been doing that. We've done it in 38 states now, which is pretty fun.
Wow.
We've it's kind of been all over, and we've had a blast with it. We are adding, so it's a 2-day pistol class. We're making our third or fourth trip down to Arkansas this year with the class. So this year for Arkansas, we're actually gonna do, like, instead of the 1 and 2 first 2 days of this, we're adding days 3 and 4. So it's basically going to be the advanced evidence-based pistol skills, where we're actually going to add in the trigger interactive system and some actual decision-making skills. Down there in Fort Smith, they've got a great training community. That's Jamie Green and Kara Connery and Paula Davies and Rob Elliott and that crowd down there, man. They've got a great, if you ever get a chance to take a class down there with those guys, they're so fun. They're great shooters. They've got a great facility and all that. And they always turn out for a class. But this year we're going to add some stuff, and with some folks that have taken this class multiple times, which is awesome. And they all keep coming back and tell me that they get something from it every time they take it. But with the Trigger Interactive, we get to add some additional stuff, some context potentially, to, now we've kind of got that. Okay, I can stand and deliver. Now let's add some movement. Let's add some transitions. Let's add some decision making. Let's add some context to this, so that if your day comes, that when you're sitting there doing the math, you've got the right equation in your head, and you're not just thinking, well, in Neil and John's class, 2 years ago I could do a sub-second draw, so I can today. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe you're adding a little bit more to the equation when that stuff's running through your head on your day.
Man, I know you and I have had some conversations offline about that decision making, and it'll be interesting to see if, and I don't know if it's interesting to see what the draw looks like. Hey, stand to deliver, draw the first shot, A zone. To, well, now you're going to have to react to one of these targets. You don't know which one it's going to be. What that does to slow down the performance aspect of it.
Yeah.
The hot topic a few months ago, and it's still a hot topic, is reacting to visual stimulus compared to an audible stimulus. And there's a ton of good work that's being done right now with that. And one of the things, it kind of threw that debate. One of the things with the Range Buddy app, with the virtual instructor, is there's shoot or no shoot. It's a shoot or no shoot scenario that you can set up to where it'll flash a random shoot or a no shoot image, and then you have to decide whether or not to shoot. And it's through those conversations and kind of that argument that was happening on social media where I was like, man, it is still not I don't think we're there yet with the technology, as far as, I don't know if we'll ever be able to quantify what the skill degradation will be responding to an audible versus a visual stimulus in the context of what we can do now. Right. And I don't know if you saw the conversation with the lasers and outrunning your headlights. And one of the things that there was kind of a conversation that was happening, and it was a quieter conversation. It's like, well, it's not an analog decision. It's not, I see a laser on a target and I decide to shoot or no shoot. And it's not that I have to absolutely shut off my decision-making process in an instant, because in the real world, a second bad guy doesn't immediately appear next to the first bad guy. There are other visual contexts and clues going on in that environment. So it's never an analog decision. So it'll be pretty cool to see what kind of data comes out of using the Trigger Interactive with some folks that you've shot before. And I was like, man, the damn Range Buddy app is kind of, it doesn't address that issue. And then one of my buddies was like, well, it does, it's still a good tool and it's on the right path, but it's, there's still a ton of work to be done in that area.
I think the Range Buddy app is a fantastic app, in that the average folks that are going to the range don't know what to do. And again, I don't want to, tell people they don't belong or anything along those lines. But I think a lot of folks, I'm fortunate. I've got my own range 200 yards off my back deck, and I can go down there and shoot by myself. And I come up with a plan because this is what I do. But there's also a public range that's about 2 miles from my house. And I've gone there exactly twice because I'm too scared to go back for a third time, because there's people there. Both times that I'm there, guys they fill mags and then they do mag dumps, and then they fill mags and they do mag dumps, and they don't have a plan to actually get better. And when you walk into a place and people are pointing guns at you, if you come back, that's your problem, not theirs. So I'm just like, okay, I won't go back, unfortunately. But I think that's what the Range Buddy app does, is it gives somebody hey, I want to work on this. Here's some drills that'll work on that. And while, the visual versus audio stuff, again, I go back to that. If you can't stand and deliver to some degree, you'll never move and deliver to any degree. And so, you've got to get a baseline of some sort. I think adding context as quickly as we can helps solidify the learning process. I think the guided error and the managing some folks, emotionally and that kind of stuff is all big and important stuff. But if you're just going to the range to practice, which we all should be doing, the Range Buddy app is fabulous. And the first time I saw it, man, the very first time I saw it, I think I messaged you right off the bat. I'm like, hey, dude, I want to do videos with this because this is amazing. I think this is a great tool. And I think you and I talked on the phone for like 45 minutes that day. And I'm like, no, you're onto something with that. So I strongly suggest anybody that doesn't have it, at least download it, because you can download it. You can get some of the stuff for free and get an idea of what that is. Make a plan, go to the range, and see how you do. Because I think, again, people don't know what their math is. because, they go and they do mag dumps at the range sometimes, or even if they're trying to do a bill drill or a failure to stop or something like that, which, you can add context around all of those all you want, and you can poo-poo it if you want. But the idea is at least you know what you can do, and you've got something that's repeatable and measurable. So now you can work on it versus just a mag dump. And I don't know how fast I did it. So I know I'm not here to pimp your stuff, but dude, the range butt gap is important. And I think it's something that everybody should have that thing on their phone when they go to the range.
I appreciate it, man. That means a ton. I was, before I integrated the tracker into it, I was working bill drills with Andy, and I was like, man, I don't know what my baseline is. I was like, I have no idea if this is improvement or if it's not. And I was like, man, it'd be cool if, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, I'm doing that. Why don't I just add that to the thing? Right. Like, cause for me, it's like, man, it would be really cool to see, am I getting better? Or then you come back to it and you say, hey, I haven't shot this drill in 6 months. What performance degradation did I have? Was it negligible, or is that something I need to work on? And how does my dry fire affect all of that stuff? But let's get back to the evidence-based pistol skills course before we wrap it up. I know you guys are a little bit ahead of us. And it's we've had some great side conversations, but this evidence-based pistol skills course is one of those things where 10 years ago or so, it was, if we look at how far the training industry has come in the last 10 years, we've just seen exponential growth in both the number of people that are doing it, but the number of reputable and quality instructors that's out there. And if we're looking for what this class is designed for, right? Like, it's the worst moment of your life. You have to be able to stand and deliver and perform. I don't know if there's another, how do I want to phrase this? This class looks at everything that you're going, not everything, right? The 80% of most likely skills that you're going to need in a defensive gun use, and focuses in on those. And the fact that it has been built around 50,000 real life self-defense gun uses is really the part that I think a lot of folks, it removes all of the ambiguity, right? Like, you can't, it removes personal opinion. It's, hey, it's not arguing about splits or, because everybody can say, oh, a second and a half is a great time. And you're like, well, man, actually a second and a half is a great time, but let's get you down under a second. So as we're wrapping up, what are the skills, right? If you're looking at when a student takes this course, what are the skill sets that students are walking away from this class having?
Well, I think the main one is the knowledge of their own math and their own abilities. But my goal is when they walk out of that class, that they know with confidence that they can get the gun out of the holster and do the work that they need to do to defend themselves on their worst day, and can do it reliably. There's a lot of, and like I say, there's a ton of. I think firearms instruction has come leaps and bounds in the last even 5 years. We're seeing so many good guys out there teaching great stuff. But I think holistically, everybody's kind of got that same goal of, I want people to walk away, knowing what they can do and being able to defend themselves. And if somebody can walk away from our class with the skill to get their gun out and do the work that they need to do, and make a good decision in that moment, then I feel like I have, I've won in that scenario, and I've given them the confidence to be able to protect themselves. And so, that's really at its core, to win a gunfight. We start the class all the time of what are the things that you got to do to win a gunfight. One, you have to have a gun. You have to carry a gun. So many people don't even, they're like, well, they show up to class with a gun in a box. And again, if you're flying in for a class, don't hear me that you have to have a gun up at the airport, none of that stuff. But a lot of people are like, well, I'm just running over to the store quick, I don't need a gun. And those are the horror stories that here. Go listen to the Ask podcast and you hear those horror stories of, man, I just ran out for a minute. And that was the day I needed it. And so have a gun. What's the next thing you're going to need it to win a gunfight? You're going to have to get the gun out, and you're going to have to do it reliably. You're going to have to be able to find your sights. And this isn't the dot versus irons debate. And I don't even want to get into that stuff. I mean, shoot what you want to shoot. I don't care. I think a dot makes you better and faster, but that's you get to make your own decision there. But what we typically see is folks that show up that can't find their front sight, or they can't find their dot reliably. And so if I could give you some skills and some tips that will help you find your front sight, find your dot, and stay focused on the target, then I've done, I feel like I've done my job and got you moving on down the path. Whether you come back to my class and do it again, or you take the advanced version, or you take a shotgun class, or you go off and you take Riley Bowman's class or Tim Herron's class, or there's a ton of great people out there. There's very few I'd say don't go to, because you're going to learn something great from so many people. But when you leave my class, I want you to be able to get the gun out and do whatever you need to do, whether it's at the range, in your practice, or at your next class. I want you to be able to do it safely. And another thing that I think a lot of folks don't really focus too much on, and I don't like to be that guy of we're the only one that do this, because I know there's a ton that do, but we spend a significant amount of time on holster work too, getting back into the holster, because man, it's scary watching people point guns at themselves. And that's kind of a hot topic right now, the appendix versus strong side. I don't know that that'll ever not be a hot topic, but you can carry appendix safely. You can get a gun into the holster without pointing it at yourself. You can do this, and people aren't shooting their junk off all over the country every day and twice on Sunday. That's just not happening. If it was, we would hear a lot more of it. I know it does happen, but I've seen the horror stories of the strong side people that, I see more safety issues with the strong side carriers pointing guns at their calf and at their back and their butt and that kind of stuff. And so we spend a significant amount of time on there too. Cause that's, a gunshot wound is a gunshot wound. A self-inflicted one is just more embarrassing, I think. And so, we had a lady show up to our class that, she's literally in the Guinness Book of World Records. And I will not out her any further than that. But she did share with us that at a class several years ago, she's working strong side. She went back into the holster and she shot, she torched one off, and it went through her, into the top of her thigh, out the bottom of her thigh, right above the knee, then into her calf, and out of the calf. So she had 4 wounds from one shot that she did to herself, and it took her 2 years of rehab to be able to walk right again. So I don't think it matters where you carry it. There's some danger to it. There's some inherent danger, and you've got to be able to do it safely. And so, again, that's another big one that I want people to walk away being able to get their gun back into the holster. Because, man, if you do this if you pull a gun on your worst day, think of the adrenaline dump, think of all of the different things that you're going to have to deal with. And if you've got, a couple hundred times back in and out of the holster where you've done it safely under, somebody's kind of watchful eye of, hey, let's be really careful with this. Hopefully on that day, you're going to be safe. And that's what I want. I want on your day, you'll be able to call me and say, hey, my day came and I survived it. And whether, I know we get emails and I get phone calls and people stop us in airports and all of that kind of stuff of, I heard your voice on this day and you saved me. And our kind of standard response is we didn't save. We may have told you something, but you did the work, and you listened to yourself and you listened to the voice and you did a mental rep and you saved yourself on that day. And you were mentally present so that you could save yourself on that day. I didn't do anything. I wasn't there. So I didn't save you. It's an honor that you feel that way. And it's an honor that you came and told me that. But I want you to be able to do the work. I want to empower you. Like you said, I want to see people empowered. And I much more love to see the light come on of, hey, I understand something now, versus the, oh my goodness, I have a sub-second draw. You know what I mean? Or I got one now. I love to see that light of, oh my gosh, I can do this. Now let's go make it as accurate as possible. That's where I get my excitement and the endorphins for me when I'm at class.
That makes sense, man. And that reholstering part is critical. I just saw yesterday, I think, or the day before, there's a well-known instructor, and he said, hey, a good buddy of mine that I've known for quite some years, he's an LE, and he He shot one off into his thigh, reholstering. And it's, that's got to be one of those things where I think there's a sweet spot for people's safety, right? And that's when they're really conscious of what the gun can do to themselves or what it can do to others. And then the more you do it without incident, well, the less we think about it, right? Like, how many times have you driven your car and through that intersection? So maybe you don't check it as much as you should. And so let this be a reminder for you. Hey, reset yourself on thinking that you're absolutely safe with your handgun, and make sure that you are actually doing it safely. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is, the criminal and, compliance. And, for me, I'm not willing to bet my life or my family's life on the mercy of some dude that's willing to stick a gun in my face. So being able to do the work that you need to do and knowing what you're capable of, will go a long way to making sure that that's one less thing that you have to worry about in that moment. All right. There are better things that you should be worrying about. And it's, I don't know, I haven't been there, so I don't know what all is going to be going through my brain, but I feel like the less that I have going through, like the less self-doubt that I have, the better I'm going to be able to perform.
Well, it just opens up more neural pathways for you to make good decisions. If you've got some of this stuff ingrained, and I like the evidence-based approach for lots of reasons, but there are two videos that changed the way I think about a lot of this. That a lot of the self-defense stuff that really hit me, that I go back to time and time again of, here's some evidence of something that actually happened. One is a dude that, carried without one in the chamber, that, a store owner, it's on the channel. It crushes my heart every time I watch it. And I know a lot of people when they first start carrying, because I was one of them that struggled to put one in the chamber and then put that gun in my holster and put it on my body. It's a scary thing, right? It's, and then there's that whole group of folks that if you can't do this, you don't deserve to carry. That's such garbage. If you can't do it, then figure out what you can do, and eventually you will get to that point that you can do it. And so I like to be a little more supportive of that, but you can watch a man draw a gun and protect his son, and then watch him get shot, and he spends literally the rest of his life trying to work that. It's something in his brain. He's laying there bleeding to death, and he's trying to work the action of a gun to get one into the chamber that he'll never get to shoot that gun, and both he and his son are dead, or passed away because of it. And I don't blame that guy. I don't want to run him down. I want to honor that sacrifice and the fact that there's a video out there that the rest of us can learn from. That here's the risk, and here's some evidence that says maybe we ought to have one in the chamber. Now you get to make your own decision, but that's that evidence-based approach to me that says, listen, here's why we do some of the things we do. And you see people that are looking down the barrel of a gun that try to draw, and they don't win that fight. You've got to wait your turn. And so if we can use that evidence and honor the sacrifice of some folks that are out there. I mean, those people that, died in the in the Jack Wilson shooting at that church, I don't blame those two guys for not knowing that stuff, but I blame anybody that doesn't learn from that lesson. That let's honor those sacrifices. Let's learn from the evidence, and let's get better and protect ourselves and protect the people we love.
And if you want to go watch all the videos on the ASP channel and learn those lessons, you can. But sounds like there's some folks that have done it, right? Like John has watched every one of those videos to analyze it. And there's a ton of stuff, right? Like one of the things that I've noticed is there's a ton of similarities between a lot of those things. But it's the outliers where we really learn those lessons. And it's hey, this guy didn't have a round chamber because everybody thinks you can do the Israeli draw or whatever. And one of the things that I'll tell students that we have where they don't feel comfortable carrying around in the chamber is, with an unloaded safe gun, handgun, right? And dry fire. Just do dry fire from the holster. And as long as you don't have a dead trigger when you press out, that means you wouldn't have shot yourself. So work on that to build up your confidence, right? Like if I present my handgun, I go out, it's not a dead trigger. I reset it, right? Run the slide. I reholster. Because I was the same way, right? I carried appendix. I'm like, oh man, this is kind of scary. But if you do it enough, that you kind of reinforce the idea for yourself that I can do this safely. And I know I can do this safely because I've done 100 reps of it in dry fire, and I didn't press the trigger off when it was in the holster or going back into the holster. And you're absolutely right. For us to sit there and disparage people that don't feel comfortable carrying around in the chamber, what does that do for us? What does that do for them?
Yeah. Well, they just heard somebody that they feel like has some authority tell them you don't deserve to carry a gun. Yeah, you don't deserve, and I think everybody out there, I don't care if you're, a man, woman, child, or race, religion, sex, any of that kind of stuff. Everybody's life is valuable and deserves to be defended. And so, I don't know, Natalie's even got a little tattoo about that, but, people are, they're valuable. I think that sometimes we think, especially internally, some people have that belief that I'm not valuable enough to be defended or to defend myself. Because I don't have a sub-second draw, or because I don't have because I don't carry with one in the chamber because I'm scared of this or I'm nervous about that. And I don't say any of that to disparage people. Come learn it. We'll teach you, we'll show you. And it doesn't have to be me. There's a ton of other people that'll do this, that'll show you the stuff that you are valuable and that you are worthy to defend yourself and defend those that you love. There's so many of us that'll help give you those tools without that. So if somebody out there is disparaging you over that, then go find somebody else. Because there's a million of us that'll show you how to do it safely, and help you through that process. Because like I said, I carried for a few months without one in the chamber. When I first started doing this, I'm like, my goodness, I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. You don't load the gun till you're in the field and you're ready to shoot the deer or the pheasant. That's the rule, right? That's just who we are. That's how we grew up. That's we grew up with guns. How many of those have you had in class, right? But it's a process that you've got to get through mentally sometimes. And, those are the things that make me so happy when we get to the end of class and people have that confidence now to go do what they got to do to defend themselves.
I carried an empty chamber and an XDM. Don't hold it against me. Natalie, what was I want to wrap it up. Before we do that, I got two final questions for you folks. Natalie, what was the biggest takeaway for you from this course?
From evidence-based pistol, I think my biggest takeaway was probably that I can shoot a sub-second shot and I can do it like multiple times. We had a class, I kind of had a private teaching moment with Chris Bean, and that was when I got my first sub-second draw. But during this class, you do several reps of this, and you really, like Dad said, you start at 5 seconds, and then you work your way all the way down. And once you finally do get to that sub-second draw, it's just the best feeling. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull that off, and keep up with the rest of the class, and continue doing it. So it was really cool, just feeling kind of that thrill. Also, just that there is a lot of math and reality that goes into these equations of self-defense encounters. And it takes a little bit to learn the different pieces of it. But once you kind of have the different pieces, you can start putting together your own, ideas about it. And you can start trying your own theories, and you can start, kind of coaching yourself through it, because, the instructors of this class usually are showing you where your inefficiencies are and giving you some feedback on how to get better, and how to kind of shave off that inefficiency is kind of what we say. And I just think it's so cool, kind of getting armed with those tools to be able to go back and coach myself once I'm not at this class anymore. So yeah, being able to kind of coach yourself through was one of the big takeaways, but also I can't not say the thrill of getting a few sub-second draws, because that feels pretty good.
I know I said a couple. I want to kick this question both of you guys, because it's something that's popped up recently. The Suited Shootist, he made a post the other day about not training with or not training basically family, right? How is that? And I see it in class when I have a husband and wife show up or a boyfriend and girlfriend show up, and I'm like, hey, you go stand over there and you leave him alone, you leave her alone, right? Because that dynamic typically doesn't do well. What have you guys done to really facilitate the learning process between, father and daughter?
So, I worked at a gun range for like 2 years, and I ran into a lot of like husband and wife combos that, you kind of want to put them on different sides of the range because one of them is always going to be a little bit more knowledgeable about these subjects than the other, whether it's the husband or the wife. I've seen it both ways. And typically at this gun range in South Dakota, it was usually the husband. But typically one of them will know a little bit more. And the other one is always, instead of focusing on what the instructor is saying, you're focusing on listening to what my husband or wife is, kind of filtering that through and telling me. So we separate the husband and wives so that they can both learn from the instructor instead of the wife waiting for the husband's permission to learn from the instructor, kind of. I don't know. I never have felt like I need to ask dad's permission ever. So we just kind of get to the range and we're both working and learning on our own things. And I know that I don't need to wait and have dad explain it to me. I know that I have every right to stand here and learn as much as I can from this instructor, even if it is stuff that, dad has taught me that's different. We've gone to classes where I kind of see a look on dad's face when the instructor is saying that we're going to try something. And I'm like, oh, I really feel, I don't know. My dad says I can't is kind of what I want to say, but I'm like, my dad's right here. I can't even pull it off. So, every once in a while we'll run into that. But dad even tells me like, okay, well, we're at their class. Like they want us to do this for a reason. We're supposed to learn something from it. So let's lean into it and try it and see what we learn, and sometimes it leads to a funny conversation on the way home about how bad it went. But usually it'll lean towards, I never really thought about that aspect of it, whatever it is. So we've never really had that trouble. But I don't know if it's just because I don't know. I mean, I was homeschooled. This guy was my teacher. I've learned a lot from him already. So now it's time to learn from somebody else.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit because I think in classes, the husband, wife, the brothers, sometimes there's a challenge with that as well. The father, daughters, we've had some of that kind of stuff, or boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. There's a power dynamic there that has to be at least acknowledged. And in some cases I see, and I'm thinking of one specifically that was a father-daughter that was kind of early on in the evidence-based pistol skills when John and I were teaching. I don't even remember where it was, but I do remember a dad and a daughter that she came up to me at a break and asked if she could have a new partner because her dad was, and I think he was, I think he had good intentions, and I don't think he was trying to be a jerk or anything along those lines. But I think what he was trying to do was to take the words that we were saying and reverbalize them to where he thought she would understand. And that was frustrating her. And so we made a big deal of it and put a bunch of names in the hat, and everybody changed it up, and things were good. Natalie and I have taken classes before where, Masada Ayub, the first time I took Natalie to a Mag 40, and when we walked up and I've taken several classes with Mawson. I love his stuff. He's such a good guy. And I just enjoy his stuff. I walked up to introduce him and he's like, well, you two can't stand on the line together. And I'm like, dude, I didn't bring her here for me to teach her your stuff. I brought her here to learn your stuff. We got on different lines and by about that was a Mag 40. So about the third day he comes over and he's like, hey, maybe you should go stand beside her and get some pictures of her stuff and that kind of stuff, because he kind of realized what we were doing there. But usually if I'm taking the range monkey to a class, we're trying to get some content. So they have to kind of allow us And I stand back and I tell myself from time to time, I'm like, my big spiel at the beginning of my class is embrace the weirdness. So, hey, if this is weird to me, I need to take my own advice. And we're going to embrace this weirdness and see what happens. And like Natalie said, there's been a couple of ride homes where like, I never thought about it like that. There's something that we can learn there. And, I don't know that I'm going to take this and do it that way from now on, but it's a tool in the toolbox now. So, that it's an interesting dynamic. And, Steph and I go to classes all the time, where we stand on the line together. Some instructors don't allow it and some don't. I'm like, we don't have that issue, that some folks have. And I don't know why. I think it's just a different dynamic. And so it's not 100% of husband and wives or dads and daughters or moms and sons, that kind of thing, are always going to have that. But I think it's probably for the good of everybody to split them up when they're at classes, just to so you don't have to deal with that if it's not there. But the other side of it is if Natalie and I travel somewhere to take a class, I'm going somewhere to do something with my daughter. This is a daddy-daughter hangout time, and I want to hang out with my kid for this thing. And I'll respect the instructor, but at the end of the day, if they'll allow us to stay together, we seem to get along okay. And so it's more fun for us if we can. But if they want us to split up, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, I think there's a level of, I feel like you guys you're at that level where you're mature enough and you're knowledgeable enough to understand that, hey, we're paying this guy money to teach us some stuff, so let him do that thing. And B, I feel like you guys do it enough to where there isn't that insecurity where if it is something that's being taught in a substandard way or something different, to where you're like, all of a sudden this is going to become permanently ingrained. Like, hey, we can roll with the punches, and we're both smart enough to have a conversation afterwards to figure it out. But I think for a lot of folks that coming into it, they don't, right? And I think there's an anxiety on the boyfriend's part, or on the better shooter, right? If it's the wife, right? There's some anxiety to, hey, maybe I need to help him or her do better so that they don't feel insecure about this whole deal. And then that just kind of creates this weird setting of, now you have one of them trying to coach the other one. And really, I would just want to be like, so I think separating them is easier than saying, hey, do me a favor. You're not going to teach each other crap in my class, right? Just don't talk to each other. Just do what I say. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a much easier way to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to split you up, instead of like, hey, we've been doing this and we've seen it a bunch of times where it doesn't work out. Your sidebar coaching isn't going to help, because now they're thinking about what you're telling them and thinking about what I'm telling them, and they're trying to marry those two things in their brain. So maybe let's just don't do that.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many horror stories when it comes to that too. And that, I think of one that happened at a range that Natalie and I have taken several classes at. We were not at this class, but they had a ladies' night shoot, and the husband came along with one of the ladies, and the instructor said, hey, you can't be out here for this. So he went and sat quietly, and at every break he was chirping in her ear, to the point where they sent him to his car. And then when the class was over, he came up and and was chirping in her ear again, went up to the line to help her clear her gun, and took her gun out of her hand and then shot himself through the arm and into her leg. And so they've had to do their safety medical protocol over that one dude. And I'm like, you're under good. I mean, if you don't trust the people for the instruction that you're paying them for, then don't come pay them for it, And so we've been really fortunate safety wise. We've never had, we've had a diabetic issue. We had a pretty bad bee sting. We've had some heat exhaustion, that kind of stuff. Never had any firearm related safety, actual medical. Of course, you're going to have safety issues that you have to address. And we do, but never had anybody hurt with their gun other than maybe some railroad tracks, from a bad grip or whatever. But the husband-wife thing, I think one thing that we might have going for us that others don't is because we have a pretty good sized YouTube channel, people already know, they feel like they know who we are before they get there. And so, and they see how Natalie and I react to each other on camera. And, I do get tired sometimes of the comments of, if you guys wouldn't high five so much, you could shoot better, more. And I'm like, first off, where's your video? And if I'm going to shoot, if my daughter does something great, that was specifically on where we were shooting the playing cards in half, and we were like celebrating. That was really cool. We shot cards in half, for crying out loud.
The long way.
Yeah. Dude, like, if you wouldn't high five so much, you'd get back. I'm like, okay, well then clearly my class isn't for you. But the people that embrace that and like that show up to our classes, I think it just creates a mental position of folks that come into class ready to learn and engage in the training, because they've already kind of seen how we teach. So I think we don't deal with that near as much as maybe some others do.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is maybe that, and I don't know for sure, but maybe it's that we do teach classes, and so we kind of know what it looks like when family members are at classes together, and so we do kind of want to stay away from all those stereotypes. I don't want my dad to be whispering in my ear after the instructor says something, and him trying to I don't want to look like that to anybody else. Even we have a reputation to keep up a little bit, and so we honor that as much as we can. So we try to keep our mouth shut during class, and we'll say what we need to on the car ride home when the cameras aren't rolling.
That's awesome. Hey, before we wrap up and give you guys the rest of your night back, is there anything that we should have talked about that we haven't touched on?
Oh man. No, man, this has been fun. I love doing this stuff and hanging out, and I'm glad that you had us, Jeremy. I'm glad that Natalie could join us. I always like doing these things with John too, but he had a thing come up, so life is life, and Natalie jumped. And I told you about Natalie in Boise. She had almost as much notice for this as she did for that class. So thanks for coming on, Natalie. I think the big thing is that I would want people to hear is if you've had a bad experience at a class before, don't give up on shooting classes. Find another instructor. If you've had a good one, share that with folks. And if you've never taken a class, like, the vast majority of folks out there haven't taken classes. And that isn't probably the crowd that's watching here or even the crowd that watches ASP, but so many people haven't taken a class and think that they have some skills. And frankly, they may have skills, but they don't know their math, and they don't know where they're at, and they don't have that decision made tree go. And Steph and John and I and Carrie Dudenhofer were just fortunate enough to take another For Science Institute class on methods of instruction. And my goodness, if you're a firearms instructor and have the means, that is a class to take. One of the most fun things that came out of that is we are now brand ambassadors for Science Institute, the ASP team is. So that's pretty cool that they recognize some of the stuff that we're doing and want to kind of work with us on this. And we can kind of tell you about this. But man, if you're not taking classes to get better, you're not getting better. And just going to the range, and as much as I love the Range Buddy app, just going to the range with just the Range Buddy app is probably not going to get you to a level to make that decision on that day. You've got to get some instruction under professional eyes so that when you can take those lessons and implement them when you're using the Range Buddy app. So don't. It
all comes full circle.
Yeah, it's a big revolution, right? And so, man, go out and get into a class. And I know they're not cheap, and I know it's it's a big time commitment. But there's so many great instructors out there that can help you with this stuff. And, humbly, I would say that I would love it if every person out there came and took one of our classes, but I know that it's not going to work. But go take a class. If you don't get into mine, get into somebody's. If you want to join us, I know there's a few empty spots on some of the classes that we've got on our website right now. And that one down in Arkansas where we do the Trigger Interactive, I think there's a couple of slots left on that. So if somebody wants to come join us for that, man, it'll be worth your time. You'll get better. You'll see some stuff, and you'll maybe think about firearms instruction a little bit different than you did before.
Yeah. If you haven't taken a class, it sounds like it's a great first class because it's going to give you, it's going to set a great baseline for you. But it's a reputable course taught by some great dudes. And then what that'll do for you is the next class that you take, you're going to be a much better student, right? And you'll be able to receive so much more from the next class that you take. And if you keep stacking some great classes, that's what happens. And it allows those learning leaps to be even greater. And it's a dude. Get the ASP Unlimited app, check that out. There are 18 classes in there that's going to help backfill a ton of knowledge and give you a ton of knowledge. And then go out there and train. And then next thing you know, you'll be a training junkie. You're going to love it. The camaraderie and the friendships and the relationships that come out of it are crazy. And you'll be a better person for it, not just for shooting, but in the rest of your life too. As cheesy and cliche as that sounds. So I really do appreciate you guys jumping on with us. I know in the pre-show we said, oh yeah, about an hour on 15, and here we are coming up on close to 2. And
totally fun. So much fun, man. I just love doing these things. So
yeah, no, it was awesome. And I appreciate everybody jumping on and staying with us. I know we got off on some sidebar conversations, but it was great. It means the world to us that you joined us on the After Action Project. Go to activeselfprotection.com, watch.activeselfprotection.com, and get you a bottle of Locked In Grip for the next class that you take or for your next range session. Let Brian and Shelly know that we sent you, and you won't be disappointed. Thank you guys so much. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you next time.